and welcome to the Raw Preview Podcast. I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to look ahead to tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts, where we not only review Raw and SmackDown, but also the Wednesday Night War between NXT and AEW, pay-per-views, we have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But as I said, I'm joined by Michael Sidgwick and Michael Hamflett. But before we dive in to Monday Night Raw, I feel like there's some admin to get out of the way here with the breaking news this morning that Aaliyah's broken nose on NXT last week was a work. Now, one person around this table actually posited the idea that it was a work, and the other one scoffed and called it impossible. So, Michael Sidgwick, the floor is yours.
First of all, the next time I'm right, I would like a spectacle such as this to...
Pyro, the lot.
Yeah, the next time I'm right, and I'm rarely wrong, I would like a similar platform for Michael Hamflett. Stamford Mike, Mark Hamflett.
Big Titan, please.
Big Titan. Salter. You get it? He's Walter, but he's salty about AEW. To do the same thing. Now, with all that being said...
This is the worst apology ever.
Well, Hulk Hogan in the New Day beats it, so I don't know what you're talking about, right? So apologise for that, for one.
Not touching that. Not touching that.
Right, anyway, Michael Hamflett correctly guessed that Xylee had not, in fact, broken Elias' face, to use the verbiage of Nia Jax last year. So, yeah, clearly I wasn't paying enough attention. Michael Hamflett had a great insight there.
Michael Hamflett spotted a doctor walking up the stairs before 3 was slapped on the ring and just thought, that's a bit weird, he's got a towel, there's some ketchup sachets, isn't it? What's going on there?
I mean, it was a rubbish match. Can you forgive me for not paying attention? No, Michael Hamflett was right. I instantly shot it down because when you get yourself into a position when battle lines are drawn, you just start to believe your own narratives, and maybe, just maybe, I've learned my lesson. I'm sorry.
Wow. I was waiting for I'm sorry, I love you. Sorry, I was giving you more space to finish that.
Smash in the face.
Like, I will say this, like, again, we have joked a little bit that, like, they've gone a long way around here to something that might not matter all that much. Even more so the fact that she posted, was it on Twitter or Instagram, the photo you showed me during the podcast of her face smashed up. Like, they must have had to make her up backstage. I remember that story of Ricky Steamboat told in the 80s of to sell the beatdown from the Four Horsemen. Backstage, he had to, like, sandpaper his face. Like, I can't imagine at full scene universe. Right, get the sandpaper out, you're going off for a nose job. Sorry, whatever it is she's going off for. Like, I can't believe how the industry has changed, that they spent time in the makeup chair to get this work across. Fair play to them for that.
Away from all our fake feud bollocks, it's actually like really good work on their part, like really detailed, a nice sort of attention to detail, fair play. They worked
keeps their brand loyalists loyal, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I think the big takeaway here is more often than not, when someone suggests something related to WWE as a work, they're probably right. Moving on swiftly, let's look ahead to tonight's episode of Monday Night.
We all apologise for Adam Wilborn.
It's a little bit surreal, this, that the go-home Raw ahead of Survivor Series feels more than a little bit limp this week, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem when WWE does something fantastic, which that episode of SmackDown, which we will remember for a great amount of time, is that they can't really build the momentum that they talk about endlessly for 3 hours at a stretch. So, yeah, it feels like this was kind of inevitable, if I'm being brutally honest and cynical about it. It was such an absolute home run of an episode that, I don't know, it just feels like anything else that followed is a diminished return. And I'm still upset that my intelligence hasn't been sort of like considered. Like, why are Raw and SmackDown in opposition?
We're just never going to get the answer, are we? We're never, ever going to get the answer. We're never going to know why 2 years ago, like, Nia Jax was furious enough that she'd be willing to smash Becky Lynch's face all over for the good of a T-shirt, or that the New Day, who had previously been on Raw that year, was suddenly so Team Blue that they were leading the charge as if they were the biggest heels on television. They've never, ever tried to explain this. Yeah, we'd go, the qualifier is the shows are normally great in spite of all this. So it's almost like WWE have trained themselves not to care.
You made an interesting point just before we started here about the builds to previous Survivor Series. Normally the week of, those TVs are great because they kind of just have to chuck everything together, whereas things have kind of been laid out pretty well in advance this year, which means that tonight's episode, I mean, you've got Andrade versus Seth Rollins with Seth's captaincy and spot on the Raw Survivor Series team on the line. But aside from that, not a great deal to hook people in for tonight's episode.
They've needed accidents to happen for these angles previously to peak at the right time rather than, as Cedric points out with the NXT show a month ago, they're not normally that great at timing these things to end on the go-home. Becky Lynch was injured on the go-home show, so you have 5 days left to try and have a make good for that. I think in 2017, we were coming off the back of AJ Styles defeating Jinder Mahal because everybody, including Vince McMahon, knew that Jinder Mahal versus Brock Lesnar was not a pay-per-view main event. So these are like panic button situations that WWE, for whatever reason, have proven themselves to be quite good in. We've not had that this year, which they'll see internally as a good thing, but as audiences, I think Cedric's bang right. I think with that SmackDown followed by the Raw with Rey and Brock, we were kind of good to go. From that, these cards book themselves because you know it's going to be champion versus champion versus champion. The NXT. The invasions happening on NXT television have been far more satisfying than those happening on Raw and SmackDown. So at this point, we were kind of good to go, and it was all just television for the sake of television, which sums up a lot of WWE in this era.
Considering all my pessimism there, I am really, really looking forward to Survivor Series. I think the addition of NXT just adds a little bit more spice to it. And let's talk about the WWE Championship match, because that has the potential to be absolutely phenomenal. We've talked in the past about how Brock fares against smaller foes and how he always seems to really raise his game, especially when he's wrestling someone that he wants to work with. Rey is a true legend of the industry as well. How do you see the build to this going tonight? And could we see Rey Mysterio becoming WWE Champion against all of the odds?
No.
Okay.
Right, okay. Rey Mysterio's not winning the title, but the magic of this match is that he's going to convince us otherwise in the sheer heat of it. So I've got no reservations about the quality of the match whatsoever. As for tonight, I would prefer the physicality to be kept at a complete minimum, because I think on the night itself, the second Rey Mysterio takes a dangerously angled German suplex, with that one move, that'll probably happen from the jump, you're instantly going to engineer a really tense atmosphere of that beautifully ugly Brock Lesnar persuasion. I'm going to be terrified when that first bump lands or very nearly doesn't land, but it's Rey. So in my heart of hearts, I'll know he's timing this to millimeter precision to make me feel this way, even though because it's Brock Lesnar throwing Rey Mysterio around on his neck, it's going to feel something otherwise. I want that magical moment of, oh my God, he's in real trouble. I need to actually get behind him in the old-fashioned, I like a babyface way. Please don't ruin that tonight. I'd prefer it to be a kind of maybe a sit-down interview backstage, or Paul Heyman doing his usual spiel. I don't like the mass brawls that they do that get interrupted, but for the sake of a great match, maybe a rotten trope can help engineer a bit of sort of, I don't know. I just don't want them to get physical tonight. It's a waste.
I agree. I don't think they should lay hands on each other until Sunday night. You can already envisage the sort of punch-drunk Brock Lesnar eating multiple 619s, staggering between the ropes each time. That would really sell that match on the night, of course. But yeah, what do you make of this match? Because it's one that's kind of come out of nowhere, has been springboarded off the back of Crown Jewel, and yet has given us, like I said, a match of the night contender.
Yeah, I mean, there's positive pressure on this match because we know what Brock does with little guys that are no actual threat to his title. There's too much precedent now that suggests this match won't be any good, and that's before you consider, as Cedric points out, just how incredible Rey Mysterio is at the emotional beats of a match, regardless of his age and physical frame, stem cell needs aside. He's not going to have kind of like that spark of Finn Balor or Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, but he's got something just as powerful in the heft that he brings because of how much people love him. So the match will almost certainly be brilliant. And yeah, the one thing that could, I dare even say damage it, I'm probably being overly critical, but just keep all of it safe at this point. What we've seen has been more physicality in the build-up than Brock's ever had with any of those other guys I've just listed off. Normally it's been Raw versus SmackDown or a weird dream match. This is a feud that's been built in a very traditional WWE way. Rey was an associate of one of Brock's old opponents, and now he's here. He's taken a kicking during that feud, and he wants some revenge. There's a nice element of, I don't think anybody would have expected at the start of this year, Dominic Mysterio to provide something quite valuable to a feud.
It sounds so silly when you stick his surname on there.
Yeah.
Dominic Mysterio. It's like
Dominic Gutierrez? No, it's Dominic Guerrero, isn't it? Yeah. Dominic Guerrero. Nobody would have thought that would have actually played. When we were talking about the Samoa Joe build, it all sounded quite daft. But again, I would argue that SmackDown hospital moment where he F5'd Cain Velasquez on Dominic's body after Rey had jumped into him and he threw him against a wall. That was WrestleMania quality stuff for a Saudi Arabian ugly money show. That can now finally be applied to something we can enjoy.
I'm going to be completely like contrarian to my usual self, even if they botch this build, which I don't think they will, it's been so good in totality that I will not complain about it. I think they've reached the point now where they've built this match brilliantly. I've loved the build for this match, completely inconsistent with my general feelings on the main roster. I think they've played a total blinder, and even if tonight is a bit too much or a bit too little or a bit too like drab in terms of the tropes that they traditionally do, I'm still bang up for it. Bang up for it.
They can't douse the fire in one night, can they? They've only got one night left.
Even if they do, like, they've done a great job here, and I will completely applaud them for it.
And use the players far, far better than if we'd had a champion versus champion match. I mean, that would have dead cert buried Adam Cole no matter how. Because they were just visually, when you compare him to standing next to Brock and
it was nightmare fuel, wasn't it? That whole three-way.
Yeah.
Considering this is WWE, I kind of have to ask this question.
Why?
Is there any chance we see Dominic's involvement on Sunday?
Again, it would make sense. So, like, far be it from me, the one time they do something that is germane to the storyline they're telling at large, for me to complain about it, considering how much I want more of it, just feels like the extent of his involvement I would like to see is a horrified expression on his face when Rey Mysterio is cradling his neck at the finish, and maybe, like a post-match beatdown. I don't want to see any kind of intervention. I don't want to see Dominic Mysterio. It's like Neil Mysterio, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. I don't want him
Sarah Undertaker.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to see him have any involvement in the match. I just think you could have something great here, like a proper old-fashioned David versus Goliath story that transcends that genre because it's going to be disturbing and not this kind of like cute big guy versus little guy story. I just don't want to see him involved.
As much as it would be nice for Rey Mysterio to hold the WWE Championship for more than, what was it, a few hours he held it for on that infamous Raw, I sense that's probably not going to happen. But it's going to be an intriguing match nonetheless, and you can already picture the attempted 619 caught, picks up straight into an F5 as well for the finish. Let's move on and talk about Seth Rollins and Andrade, because I'm a little bit annoyed about this, understandably. I think they've been building Andrade pretty well recently, even if it's just been in and around, utilising someone like Sin Cara. And yet tonight, Andrade faces Seth Rollins for that Survivor Series spot, the captaincy of the Raw Men's Survivor Series team. It strikes me as maybe it's going to be a great match, but maybe not the best use of the two performers here.
Yeah, it's typical 1 step forward, 2 steps back. They've been, by their standards, they've tried to do something of late with Andrade. This kind of flushes it. And if you're going to build someone, at least build towards a pay-per-view and not a TV match that is really unnecessary and at this point quite predictable. As you said, perfect description, feels like a waste. I don't know what they're doing. I think the whole idea behind the match is they want a very good match on Raw. That's basically the long and short of it. Whether we get that, I don't know. Seth Rollins hasn't been on fantastic form. Andrade isn't that over, despite their, let's call it, limited attempts to do that. I just think if you're going to get a 4-star match out of this, that's as best it could be hoped.
We are presuming, of course, Seth Rollins wins this, or there's some sort of interference from SmackDown or NXT or whatever, because I mean, Andrade, as you say, is not at the right level to be captaining a Survivor Series team, and yet there's so much intrigue, or there's so much fascination that you could have there with a former NXT champion leading one of the classic main roster brands. But I sense that's probably not going to happen.
It's a bit of a misunderstanding of stakes, because to go back to what we said at the top of the podcast, there's a bit of a laziness in attempting in establishing why any of this matters. Like, they're asking us to buy that one man wants to be Raw team captain more than another without having yet sold us a reason why Raw want to fight SmackDown or particularly fight NXT. This is not a title, no matter what WWE will try and pretend it to be. And I think, the match will probably be fine, but you can never underestimate how important it is to have the reason for the match taking place in the first place, to not overwhelm this. Seth Rollins has not had enough good matches this year that you can assume him to just be some sort of banger factory. It'd be nice if there was a title or something that actually mattered on the line here for Andrade's first big win over Seth, if he's going to get it. I think, oddly enough, this is one of them situations where you can kind of put Andrade over risk-free. Survivor Series team captain, so what? Like, he can wear it as a badge of honour, but his win over Seth Rollins could be more powerful than that. And yet, I don't think they'll do it.
No.
I think in their minds, Seth has to be the leader of Team Raw because he's not got his title. So in their minds, this is like that second prize. This goes back to that Triple H promo that bordered on being good the other week, where it was like, come on, Seth, find what it was within you that I liked about you the first time. And around Survivor Series time, that's being the captain of a brand. You know, I know that
That
sounds very
promo
underwhelming,
feels like a million years ago now.
Yeah,
I
but-
don't think it's got any dramatic weight. At the time, I didn't really think it was that great. Yeah, as Hamflett points out, Seth Rollins is so inconsistent and his recent output has been so meh, in my opinion, that they want to sell this as a dream match. It's a pull for a TV show more than it ever could
It's
possibly
not a
be.
ratings draw.
No.
It's not a ratings
Not
draw.
a ratings draw. I don't think many people are looking at this match graphic even in a way like Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio. They bait and switched that about a month or so ago.
Yes.
People were excited about that. I don't think because Seth Rollins' stock has plummeted so badly that this has got the same cachet. This accomplishes nothing if I'm being
On
brutal.
a different show with a different build, it's something.
Yeah.
But for this night, it's nothing.
Having said that, I think having Seth Rollins as one team captain, Roman Reigns as another team captain, and then Adam Cole, you're assuming, as NXT team captain, does sort of elevate him in the minds
Shame
of
it's not
casual
Cassie
fans.
Sono. We could have the original Shield.
Another match we are set for tonight is Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair tagging together. They've kind of been thrown together. What's happening with Natalia, we will get to. There's some spoilers that came out last week that seem to suggest that we are getting Becky and Charlotte versus the Kabuki Warriors. Is this the best use of the talent they've got for you?
I'm just wildly, completely confused about what they're doing with the women in the main roster in this company. And as for that matter, on the events of last week's SmackDown, the NXT roster, I mean...
Are they just spinning the wheels until they can get themselves
They've
set
got
for
no
Rumble
idea what
season?
they're doing. They've got no idea what they're doing at this point. Asuka got tapped out by Natalia. I don't know if this is a rematch for that, what we're coming up to later. But then Asuka pinned... Was it Becky Lynch?
Yeah. They've clung on to this idea that Becky can't beat Asuka. And that does feel very much like head down, get through Survivor Series, and then we've got something to do at TLC. I think it was a year on from Asuka winning the title. You just feel like that's probably where they're going.
It's just been undermined by the fact that Natty beat her.
Yeah. It's been a bit all over the shop. I have no doubt that tonight Becky and Charlotte will beat Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews in a tag team match, and that'll be that.
Why are they teaming?
But even then, why are they teaming? Because really, Becky's sole interest should be this very big match she's got coming up at the Survivor Series. I know no belts on the line, but like an awful lot of pride between three stars that are kind of coming in very hot.
And she builds that as worth equal as much as the championship.
Absolutely. And this tag team match is this kind of this half story they've told between Becky and Charlotte being like kind of unfavourable partners that are just making it work for a greater good. But there is no greater good this week, so I can't. I think it'll be fine, but I struggle to buy into it ahead of time.
And with Natalia taking on Asuka, is that them potentially trying to correct the wrong of having Natalia beat Asuka or tap her out, as you said the other week?
I mean, you bloody hope so. I don't need to see an Natalia match with no stakes because, Jesus Christ, I've seen enough of them. If this is like an atonement, a bit of a mea culpa, then yeah, absolutely fine. I'm not going to look forward to it. I don't know if there's any stakes or if there's any dramatic weight beyond, oh, Jesus Christ, we've botched this, so let's just do it, make good.
The roller coaster of the Kabuki Warriors continues, I think, because there's a bit of a blind spot here with the Survivor Series. You've got this 5-on-5-on-5 women's match that have not been clear with the Raw team yet, and it's looking like if they're going to fit anywhere, they're going to fit on there. But you could have built to a tag team title match at the Survivor Series. They could have been, their belts mean that they kind of cross the brands to defend them. So you could have easily picked two of the generously overstuffed women's roster and just put them against the Kabuki Warriors here. Instead, it looks like because of their kind of mixing in with Charlotte and Natalia, they'll probably be this awkward Raw team that will allow, say, the NXT team that look a bit more unified, allow them a win because Raw can't get along or something like that. It's that. Look, I'm going to Survivor Series. I'm really excited. I think these matches look amazing on posters, but every single year is the same. You are forcing heels and babyface together. You are smushing them together, knowing full well you're going to break them apart the Monday after Survivor Series. So they have to do this weird, clumsy booking. It's a problem of their own doing.
You don't have to do it.
It's a problem of their own doing because, like, on the night itself, things tend to work themselves out.
One of the highlights of SmackDown last week, I suppose, was, of course, the Big Dog segment. It was classic. Was the tag team, the Undisputed Era, attacking in that tag team match featuring the Revival and the New Day. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Tonight we see Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins being fed to the Viking Raiders, and I sense we probably have another invasion on our hands here.
Yeah.
Why would they interrupt this match? Knowing it's going to, by all rights, finish within 2 minutes. Why are they getting this match? Because as we all know, one of their storytelling tropes is if you defeat the champions, you'll get a championship opportunity. But what have they done to deserve to be like adjacent to a championship opportunity? I get that Viking Raiders have been squashing jobbers as champions. That makes no sense either. It's just a mess that I'm going to be happy is in the rearview mirror on Monday morning.
Speaking of invasions, we mentioned this a little bit last week with Raw potentially coming to SmackDown. we always talk about the fact that we need, this show especially needs a bit of G'ing up, and we've seen NXT get involved, but no real interaction so much aside from the individual champions between Raw and SmackDown. Could that be one of the exciting tropes of tonight?
I would quite like to make this slightly more interesting now that they've done the Undisputed Era ruining the SmackDown match on Friday. It'd be quite nice if they tried again to ruin it here, and then the New Day briefly made the save for the Viking Raiders, and then you finally see all three teams with one very brief face-off before the match. It's okay that they don't have any interaction, because these title versus title matches are built just on the fact it's your brand's champion versus your brand's champion versus your brand's champion. But it'd be quite nice if just ahead of that show, because I think people are quite excited for the revival being part of it.
Yeah.
And WWE have put the New Day in, and the match will still be great, the New Day are quality, but just to see them all in the ring together, maybe have the New Day and the Viking experience, have their first interaction of any great significance just before the show, it's probably something a bit different to what they did on SmackDown, because I thought the Undisputed Era running was brilliant, but you're still left with kind of this hazy non-finish on one night that's probably going to lead to a hazy finish on another night, and that's been the only build to this tag team match.
I feel like I've not been at my best on this podcast. I think a lot of the reason is I'm hearing loads and loads of names, right? Loads of names. We're going through this. I'm hearing Charlotte Flair, Becky, Asuka, Viking Raiders, New Day, and I'm struggling to remember what brands these people are on. Like, genuinely, and
My call for T-shirts this year of all years.
Yeah.
Like, we've needed some colour coding this year.
trying to explore the character dynamics and who's got what motivation to do what, even though there's no real motivation because they're just getting told to do something. And I'm just so confused by all of this. And on the night itself, the 5-on-5-on-5s.
It's just ridiculous.
Where Raw doesn't care about SmackDown and vice versa, but there's a civil war within the factions. It's just a load of old crap that, honestly, I'm not being facetious. I'm meant to be covering this. I should have just read and crib note the entire WWE.com roster page. But if I'm meant to be doing this as a content producer and laying out all the various motivations or trying to wonder where the motivation is, the general public are going to be looking at all this, having looked at NXT maybe, or watching Raw and SmackDown and thinking, what's going on? And I think that's been reflected in the ratings. NXT didn't get the bump. SmackDown's rating last week was dreadful. I think a lot of that probably had to do with Baron Corbin turning people off because that whole stuff was risible. But yeah, it's just, this pay-per-view is confusing my bollocks off.
I hope when my seats are moved to the hard camera side, as we're all shuffled around, certainly the arena looks full. On the empty side behind the hard camera, there is a man holding up big boards that say boo or cheer based on what brand. Like, yellow is generally always cheer, NXT people like them. And then you're just told by the red or blue teams whether or not to boo or cheer. Because I'm a lot more patient with WWE than you, but you're completely right this year more than ever, especially with NXT and especially with War Games the night before. You've got multi-man and multi-woman matches the night before, and then you're asking the fans to kind of part all that the night after, which I can do. I think it's just pretty easy enough. WWE can be quite brainless sometimes, and this is a weekend for plenty of that. But on the night itself, I think there's going to be a lot of head-scratching moments where you have to try and remember who's the babyface, who's the heel. It's one of the harder ones in recent memory, and there's been a few like this.
Yeah, Andy and I were chatting about it today before the news, and it was one of those, who do you reckon will be on the Raw Women's Survivor Series team? And I was like, I don't know, don't ask me that on camera, because I have absolutely no clue.
Post-wildcard, I don't even think we're out of that period yet, following that that quite underwhelming draft, where anybody's yet got their head around these rosters.
Anyway, let us know your thoughts ahead of Monday Night Raw tonight in the comments section.
We haven't talked about Natalia and Asuka.
She's getting misted. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, but don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Plus, let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Watch there, follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
Follow Michael Sidgwick at.
If anybody out there has got some handy coded guide where I can remember who was on what roster, genuinely, I'd be really appreciative.
Colours, we need more colours. Blue, red, yellow, all the names. All that card, but with the colours of the brands they're on.
I mean, I just want the T-shirts. I want them to wear the T-shirts.
Is that what this has all been? Has this been a 2-3 year plan? I was going, these bloody T-shirts, is that all they're fighting over? And now it comes this year. I just missed the T-shirts, man. And what about the old days when they had T-shirts?
You can follow him.
Can't wrestling be that good again?
Follow him at M. Sidgwick and send in your wrestling-related flashcards. You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at What Culture WWE, as I said. But enjoy Monday Night Raw tonight. My thanks to the Dadley Boyz. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.